before we begin. Everybody
Please.
can turn on your camera. Thanks. Thank you. If you can turn on your camera so Luang Por can see you on screen. So welcome once again, and thank you very much, Luang Por Viradhhamo, for agreeing to do this session with us after a long break. So it's delightful to have you back.
Thank you, Vita. Thank you for hosting.
Thank you. So Luang Por, we can begin. We can begin with the short meditation before the Dhamma talk.
Okay. So what, say half an hour?
Yes, that's good.
Yeah, that's the usual, isn't it? Okay, let's do that. Hello, everyone. Nice to be with you. Let's do some quiet practice for a while and then see what Dhamma comes out of this session. Okay, so take a posture which is comfortable. Awaken to the environment you're in. So just look, what do you feel like sitting here? How warm is it or how cool is it? What kind of sounds are there? So you know how you feel, and most importantly, what's the mood of the mind? Nothing special, tired, peaceful. What's the mood of the mind? Now bring your attention to listening. Let sounds come to you. It might be very silent. Let the silence come to you. And be the witness of sound. Feel your body sitting on the chair or on your cushion. And be the witness of bodily feelings. Listen to sound. Feel the body. Say, feel the hands. Feel the hands, the sensations in the hands. Listen to sound. Feel the hands. So sense base changes, sense experience changes, but witnessing awareness is unchanging. So be that awareness, be that conscious knowing presence. Bring your attention to the breathing of the body, witnessing the breath as it expands your chest. So feel the rising of the chest and the falling of the chest. So the breath, bodily feeling is changing, and the knowing or witnessing is unchanging. Be that knowing. Into that space, bring up a perception of someone or a thought or an image of someone you love. On the in-breath, name them and let their name be a recollection of what love feels like at the center of the chest. So I use Luang Por Viradhhamo, others, but if I on the in-breath say Luang Por, that brings up a strong sense of gratitude and love. And I feel that at the center of my chest. And then if I breathe out, Luang Por, may you be well, there's a sense of giving and gratitude. So there's a bunch of things going on. There's witnessing, there's localization of attention at the center of the chest with the breathing. There's naming the person, the image, which recollects the sense of gratitude and love on the in-breath at the chest, and giving back, may you be well. So try that for a while to stimulate the sense of love and kindness that we have at the center of our being. And your mind will remember other things, think of other things. So just recollect center of the chest, perception of kindness and love. Keep informing your heart with that, remembering the heart of openness and love. Finally, you can drop all the language if you want, just abide with that in breath, out breath at the heart. Or you can add other names, so to refresh that perception of love and kindness and gratitude. So another person, do that for a while, a third person. So you develop your own capacity to remember what loving kindness really feels like in the body, in the heart. Okay, I'll be silent. We'll just use those ideas. How's Beta doing?
Peter is just it is watching the Sankaras, Luang Por.
I hope the Sankaras are behaving themselves. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, did they get back, Wes? All safe? So the monastery is looking gorgeous. Springtime here, of course. One of our first super hot days. What is it, 25? Yeah, 25 degrees, which is a big deal for us. And the trees have just coming into leaf, so there's that beautiful spring green all over. And we've had a lot of caterpillar infestations the last 5 years. And this is the first time we haven't had any caterpillar destruction. So the fruit trees are gorgeous. And there's one tree outside my window that we planted with my mom's ashes. And it's just glorious, isn't it? Just beautiful. A ornamental cherry. That gives me a lot of joy. And then I've got a sugar feeder for the hummingbird. So we have a hummingbird, and the Baltimore Oriole is there. So it's very colorful, and there's the sound of the birds in the morning. But the downside in Canada is it's also full of mosquitoes. So you think I'll go out there and do bird watching, and as soon as you stop, these little guys come sucking your blood. So life is like that. It's beautiful and there's not beautiful, but it is really gorgeous right now, and very loving community here. So I feel incredibly privileged to be living here. Um, I've just come back from a trip to uh, Jordan and Israel, and so the suffering of that area is uh, deep in my heart. Um, uh, but then the suffering of Ukraine and the suffering of South Sudan and the suffering of the civil war in Myanmar and the suffering of people who went through residential schools. The list could go on. And one of the things I've been contemplating is how do I bear witness to this? What is my duty here? Duty, I don't know if that's the word, but how do I, because when I hear people talk about these things, and myself too, it's very easy, not very easy, it's just very um, natural to either feel despair or anger, and so that's true. And so I've been contemplating what is compassion here? And compassion isn't despair, is it? And compassion isn't anger. Um, and those are not wrong states of mind. They're very, very human and understandable. But compassion, um, to me, the what I've spoken this quite often, how I have been trying to bear witness to these things without getting sucked into the news cycles and all the analysis of that. That's necessary at some level, and important. So I've just been trying to look at a picture. So this morning or yesterday with Ajahn Suchita, I was looking at a very, very profound picture of suffering, mother and her daughter. And it's such a painful picture that I wanted to look away. But I said, no. Then why don't I just look at the picture and then see what effect it has on me? So I continued to look at the picture. Now I'm in a safe place and I don't have this in my life. So I can do this because I feel safe and I'm well fed and so on. But I just wanted to feel what this is like and not go to the abstract ideas of these are certain people with certain nationalities, with certain histories. I wanted to touch the human being. And certainly for me, photographs can do that. They go beyond the narrative. And just holding that photograph and holding that, how it affected my heart, then has really stayed with me for the 2 days since I've witnessed that. And it seems to me that that is what compassion is. That sense of empathy, of connection in some minimal way to this deep suffering that this person, not this abstract nationality, this person and their child is suffering. If I start to think in terms of, oh, it's so terrible, what is she going to do? Where is it going to go? Then I move away from the heart into thinking. That's okay. One does that. But in this case, I just wanted to hold that in my heart and continue to hold it as a perception through the day. And it's quite easy because it's such a powerful perception and image in the heart. And then so what would that mean in terms of the way I live my life? Well, hopefully that would mean that it impels me to act in some way which is compassionate. Now I can't fix those problems. And I'm not a political activist. And but I can look around and say, well, where can I be helpful? Where can I be generous? How can I serve someone? And that seems to me a good response to a deeply painful perception. And so wouldn't we say that the point of compassion is not just a abstract empathy or a distanced empathy, but that we actually live in the world and act in the world which are um, deeply compassionate and which cost us in some way our resources, our time. We actually put some significant effort into our local communities or wherever we are. So I wouldn't, something like a call to action, but to me, the response would then be very, very healthy. It wouldn't go to despair. It wouldn't go to anger. Certainly that's there when you see these things, it's so horrible, so horrible. But that's thinking. Right? But I personally, I want to see where will my heart go if I can stay with the heart with this image. And so um, I try to I can see how the more one enters into the compassionate heart, into the deep compassion of the heart, not an abstract like we are spreading metta to the people in Gaza. That's kind of people in Gaza want food, not our metta. So that kind of abstract loving kindness it's good. But what is the deep sense of love, compassion in your being rather than just a kind of a practice? And we all have it and we all value it. And we all see it's very, very important. So like say in the monastery, we try, in our little way to help and to serve. And then we support a few Afghani families. And we're trying to get another Afghani doctor out of Pakistan. So we kind of do little things like that. But most importantly, I think, is that one-on-one, that I try to be compassionate to the person, which means I have to be in the same way that I am with that picture. I have to be present to them. I have to be witnessing them as a human being, rather than just kind of doing my thing and not paying attention. Um, some of you might have read Simone Weil, who is the great witness of suffering in the Second World War and before. Jewish background, mystic, Catholic mystic, but she said one of the greatest gifts, and it's not easy, is attention, full attention, giving someone your full attention. And then, so that's what I was trying to do with this picture, is give my full attention to that, and then see what is the result. If I do that, then, and that is foremost in my consciousness as a consideration, then I find that I have no right to complain about anything. This is a really good one, because if I were to complain about anything in my life would be obscene, wouldn't it? Right? To complain about anything, my health, or I mean, I live such a beautiful life, but any life, when I put it in contrast to this suffering this person has, would not that help me to put an end to craving? The craving of what we called, we sometimes joke, don't we, when someone complains about something, governance or whatever, we say, well, that's a first world problem. It's a kind of neat way that our culture addresses, yeah, okay, it's problematic, but is that really a problem? So my sense is the more I can let consciousness be marinated in compassion and infused with compassion, the desire mind has much less power. And then all the habitual kind of complaining mind that we have as human beings, and the sort of even self-disparaging mind, I think, really is disempowered, because now we are not just going to the narratives of thought. We are actually embodying our practice in the heart in very real ways. And so much of my suffering, I'm sure yours too, has been where I am always processing life through thought rather than really witnessing life as it presents itself. And so that's what I found with these stark images, is that there's something about the mind, it doesn't want to see this pain. Oh, yeah, it's horrible. So I could say, well, I'm just not going to watch the news cycles. Yeah, that's one way to do it, and I have done that. But what if I do it differently, and I enter into this human predicament we have, that we have cruelty and we have stupidity and we have all these things as a part of this crazy human package, and that I am human, and that I can witness to that from a place of compassion. So kind of thinking about that same idea of processing, always through thought, processing through thought. One of the things that I've noticed is that the spiritual life, to be deeply embedded in the heart and not just remain in the superficiality of opinions. And this is important, because quite often we can see in any spiritual conventions, religious traditions, there can be a tendency to have ideas, clever ideas, and arguments about those ideas, but always just be in the intellect. And then there's a kind of a false sense of that I really understand. Yeah, we understand maybe intellectually. If you took the lists that we have in Buddhism, I understand dependent origination, I understand the Four Noble Truths, I understand the five khandhas, and yeah, so intellectually there is a structure which gives me some confidence. That's not really understanding suffering. Understanding suffering is precognitive, or I don't know what that actually means, but pre-thinking. If I feel guilt about something, say, and I think guilty thoughts, then I'm not really aware of what guilt is like. I can say to myself, oh, I'm really suffering from guilt, but what is guilt before before it's processed through thought, before the narrative, before the self-thinking and all that. That's a whole different ball of yarn. Why I say ball of yarn? Because I've been dyeing yarn today. I have a weaving project that I'm on to. But isn't it different? Like, and I give one example a lot, and I keep going back to it because for me it's a very clear example. If I say something unkind to you, and I know that I'm coming from an unkind place, and I dismiss you in some unkind way, because I'm a practitioner, when I go back to my own space, I will feel remorse. I will say, oh, why aren't you more mindful? Why aren't you more careful? Now, what I have learned is that that remorse is a very, very unpleasant experience, as is the picture of the mother and child. That's a very, very unpleasant thing to witness and bear witness to. So in the same way, the feeling of remorse that manifests because um, I was coming from an unkind place is actually a very, very good feeling. We call it hidayotapa because it is a sense of love and because it is a sense of not wanting to hurt, because it is a sense of wanting to not just strike out when a mood is there. So the remorse is a kind of protection. And if I really witness the remorse like I do witness a picture, I really be with the remorse here in the heart. It's not pleasant. It's not a nice thing to experience. So where the thinking mind jumps to is self-hatred. Now, self-hatred is actually quite a pleasant feeling. It's perverse because it's quite a nice feeling to hate yourself because it feels, okay, this is appropriate. You're an idiot, you fool, you've done it again, you've hurt that person, you should never do it again. But that's not looking at the remorse. That's not being remorseful. It's knowing remorse. It's being in thought. And it's the same as the picture. I look at the picture and then I don't want to know this. I want to blame someone. I don't want this unpleasantness to exist. And I can't do anything about it. So I run to despair or I run to anger. But what happens if I just witness it? Well, I would suggest that this is how the heart of loving kindness and the Brahma Viharas and all of that, how it really opens. So go back to remorse. If I were to feel the remorse, and then I would also have to see this pattern of guilt making, this pattern of constructing a self that shouldn't be like this. That's the process which actually is not loving kindness. It's not the open heart. It's more aversive, ego, self-thinking. And it feels right, especially if I've been doing it a long time. So then when one sees a pattern like this, when guilt thinking comes up, what do? Well, we try to notice it before, or we say to ourselves, oh, well, there's a lot of guilt thinking going on. What's happening now? What's really happening? What's going on? And what you'll find is probably nothing's happening. And what we don't know often, well, I didn't, at least I can only speak for myself. What I didn't know how to do, I didn't know how to wait. I didn't know how to wait. What's in the background of this? Why does the mind keep making self-critical remarks or guilt-ridden remarks? What's it like? And that's where I think the contemplative attitude of waiting, but waiting for nothing, just waiting. I've identified there's a lot of guilt thinking, or I've identified there's a lot of self-hatred thinking. I know that's going on. I know that's a pattern. And I say to myself, but what's this really feel like? What's it really like to feel guilt? And then usually there's nothing. And then sometimes you start to say, oh yeah, there's this underlying whatever it is. And that's to me the opening of the heart. Because now it's opening to some underlying material or whatever it is. And not creating a sense of self with a thinking mind. Also, you can open the heart to joy, can't you? So I look at mom's fruit tree and I go, wow, it is really, really beautiful. Now, I can then think about the tree and I can uh, take a picture of it or I can describe it, but that's not looking at the tree anymore. So when I see something beautiful in another person, in nature, what if I were to do that same attitude that I'm using with a picture that brings forth compassion? What if I do that with beauty? A mountaintop. I was just before this meeting, I have this lovely reclining chair, which I indulge in. And I have, looking out my window, there's this tube, and then there's this sugar feeder, and there's these little Tibetan prayer flags. And in the background, there's black clouds and white clouds and blue sky. Oh, it's just gorgeous. But I just sat there looking at beauty, but not saying, "Oh, that's beautiful," or taking a picture or doing it. Just allowing this sense experience to be what it is, being with it. And to me, that also opens the heart because these things are part of nature, and our heart responds to that. In Jordan, I had good fortune to go to one of these. I went to Petra and Wadi Rum, I think. So Wadi Rum is is a UNESCO site in Jordan, and it's actually where they filmed Lawrence of Arabia. So I've got a picture of Viradhammo of Arabia, but I'll send that out to you later. But we spent a night in a camp in the desert, and it was so silent. And the starlight was just really spectacular. And that is a gift of nature, isn't it? So if that is there, then rather than being busy and describing it and taking pictures and doing selfies and then sending it on WhatsApp and all of that, why not just be with the beauty? So Buddhist monks in Jordan are very rare. People didn't know what I was. One young man helped me up some steps and he called me Granny, which which I could understand. Another chap thought that I had a Syrian outfit, one of the Bedouins that was taking care of us. Uh, but when my companion would say he could speak Arabic, he would he'd say uh, the word for priest and Buddhist. They didn't know what Buddhists were. They didn't know what Buddhism was. Very many of them. And the Bedouin said, "Who's the weird guy?" So, but he was lovely. The Bedouin was just this beautiful man. So mudita, when we talk about the Brahma Viharas, we sometimes categorize it that I'm happy for my child's graduation. She has a degree and so on. Yeah, that's natural. But beauty is, I think, mudita is much wider. It's just the natural beauty if we stop thinking. If we're always thinking and doing selfies and trying to get a good pose on then we're no longer with beauty. So beauty requires silence. You have to just be attentive and wait. And sometimes waiting isn't our strong suit. We're used to more to stimulation. So of course this is what the the internet does. It stimulates the mind all the time, but it doesn't really hold your attention. It's not made for that. It's made to grab your attention to sell things. But so to look at a tree or a rock And just to allow that to come into consciousness requires a contemplative, waiting attitude. But that feeds the heart. It doesn't feed the head, maybe. Um, I think all of us as meditators are at some level trying to get rid of thinking. Like that was the first question I think I asked Ajahn Chah as through interpreter as a novice. I said, how do I get rid of all this thinking? It's just driving me nuts. And he said, well, thought's natural. You just have to learn how to pick it up. There's nothing wrong with it. And that is a very difficult lesson in the contemplative life. How to witness thinking, not suppress it, but also not be the victim of it. And that is this capacity to develop witnessing, I would say, first of all, with non-complex objects. Witnessing sound is a very good way to begin that. You just witness sound as an object. And then change the sense base to the body. That I use that a lot. So you sit down, you listen to sound, let sound come to you. You're not going out to the sound, just let sound come to you. Then you change the sense base and feel your hands. And then you go to that other sense base and you notice there's something unchanging. There's sound, there's body, there's sound, there's body. But what makes that possible is witnessing. So once you have a kind of facility for that, a confidence about that, a trust in that, I would say. Then when thought comes up, what you learned how to do is just witness. So thinking is like this. Anger thinking is like this. And you try to go to the body. This is a very, very difficult thing to do. It really is not easy. But it's not the getting rid of thought. It's choosing to notice that thought is an object, that it comes and goes. And one of the ways to do that is to start to develop, I would say, the heart chakra. To really, really start to like feel what does love feel like? What does anger feel like? To really start to embody these impressions that we have and let that be the wisdom space. It's easy for me to say these things. I've been at it for a while, but it does seem to work. And the heart is the place of non-desire. That's where fulfillment comes. So that's a bunch of ideas. Maybe I'll leave it there. Let you think about that.
Andamayang Dhammakacaya Sadhu Karanda Dhammasaya Sadhu 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 Anumodam. Thank you, Luang Por. It's so beautiful. And can I just reconfirm the name is Simone Weil, W-E-I-L?
Simone, W-E-I-L.
Yes.
Simone Weil, yeah.
Yeah. Just picked up her article and shared it on the chat for everyone.
You're fast.
Well, on the computer.
You know, there's where did you pick it up? On JSR's website? No.
No, I picked it up on Philosophy Easy.
Oh yeah, okay.
Because
there's a may I recommend an interesting website, YouTube site, I suppose, from Samaneri Jaya Sara. And she's a Theravada nun, and her background is that I think she was a professor of Eastern religious studies. I forget which university, maybe West Coast. She's very eclectic, but she's Australian, and she reads from different pieces of spiritual literature, which I find terribly inspiring, really inspiring. Her voice is very appealing, and her selection of texts I find really uplifting and interesting. She has obviously a broad reading of spiritual literature. So if you're hardcore Theravadan, then okay, that might not be for you. But one of the interesting things I do find is to dip into the literature of other beings who I think are enlightened or highly developed, and to forget about the words God and Brahman and so on, and try to plug in what is this person's realization? Because in religious life we can get so stuck with the word. So if a religious tradition is using the word God and they say, well, we don't believe in God, that's a silly statement, because a highly developed Christian or Islamic or Brahmanic practitioner has wisdom. They have insight. There's nothing lacking. So it's a kind of interesting challenge. Like, am I just stuck in my perceptual structures, which is just belief? In which case, I don't think I have that much insight. But if I read across literature and I say, well, this person sounds like they have some deep and profound experience, what are they saying? And that challenges your own sense of parochial, um, parochial belief systems. Like, the little village. My village is the best village. It's the only village. Every other village is no village. And that is a danger in religion, where we think, well, it's only Theravada, Mahayana, they have nothing. And Christians, my gosh, they've really lost the plot. And which is just a viewpoint, DT. But there is so much rich literature in all cultures. How could it just be? So if you dip into that, it becomes not so much do you believe it or disbelieve it. It's like, there's a very good author called Karen Armstrong, and she wrote a book called The History of God, and it was about the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And her history was that I think she was a Carmelite nun, and nunnery was not for her at all. She just felt too constrained by it. So she left the robe and became an Oxford scholar. And if I have it correctly, I think she wanted to debunk or challenge the whole Abrahamic ideas in some way. I'm not quite sure if I have that part right. But anyway, she has this capacity to go into a text and deeply feel what the text is about. That's a really good scholar. It's not just like critical analysis, but actually, what is this person saying? Where are they coming from? And in a sense, that's how you have to listen to Dhamma. What is the teacher saying, rather than, oh, I didn't like the jokes, or it's too this or too much that. What is the teacher telling it? So in the same way, she went into the deep dungeons of Oxford University Library and did a lot of research on the use of the word God in the three Abrahamic religions. And I read that book, and it was a difficult read, but it was very interesting how just that one word was used in those three traditions in so many different ways. In so many different ways. And some of the ways that were used were our way of talking about the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unborn, the deathless, certainly. So in one of the great destructive forces of humanity has been religion, which is so which I could see. And but that's not what religion is. That's what politics is. So I always, when I touch other religions, I always try to go for the highest, not for the most mean and petty in that, because that's not really what religion's about. So I sound like a salesperson for this website, but I really, actually, I found it very, very, very stimulating and uplifting. Any questions?
Any questions, anyone? If you have a question, please feel free to click on the raise hand button, and then I'll unmute you. Yes, there's a question from Malika.
Malika, how are you?
Malika, are you able to unmute?
Yes.
Okay.
Good, Achan. Good. So nice to see you again. Thank you,
Yes.
Bika, for organizing all this. Ajana, my question is that for some people it's easy to have compassion than metta, and when you're caught up in compassion, sometimes the emotions take over, and I think how do you use wisdom to uh, have a equal uh, feeling. And then also, I think if you have equanimity, all the other three will come naturally.
I don't, Malika, we'll go to the first part of your question.
Yeah.
When you get caught up in emotions, I would ask you, are you caught up with emotions or are you caught up with thought?
Mm, maybe thought.
That's often the case. I mean, not always, but it's very much the case when um, there is some tragedy in family, say,
Yeah.
that to accept that tragedy into the heart is so difficult that the mind goes into thinking. But to
Yeah.
witness the tragedy in its full import is so difficult. So I would ask you to look in your own practice or your own life. When you have a strong emotion, are you witnessing it in the body or are you running with thinking mind? So if you're running with thinking mind, then that won't be upekkha. That will not be equanimity. Equanimity will be witnessing. When I can witness something deeply hurtful and say to myself, this is deeply hurtful, then that witnessing is upekkha. But upekkha also, I mean, this is not canonical, this is Viradhammo, but I, I, uh, I see that all four really are part of the open heart. So um, when there's nothing happening, then the heart just rests in openness. But if someone falls in the room, the heart responds with, "Oh, how can I help you?" Or if there is maybe the sound of uh, a crane, a beautiful sound for me, then the heart responds with joy. So I think when the heart is open, it responds appropriately to time and place. So I don't chop them up. Opaque this package separate from that package and so on. I see them as the open heart. And then the open heart responds. But when emotions then are when we don't understand the thinking mind and the emotions drive the thinking, then of course it's a horrible cycle, uh, and not to blame, right? Because grief and these things are deeply difficult. That's why it's important to when there is a strong emotional upheaval, it's important to be alone and be with it, feel it and know it, and not even try to fix it. Let it just be exactly as it is, and wait it out and see what happens. To me, that seems how the heart really gets open. Because quite often these things we start to do practices. If I have this broken heart, then I have to do upekkha, like I'm some kind of chemist and I'm going to put these things together. But it doesn't work that way. It works the way it works. And so if you trust more in witnessing, and then you feel the heart getting hurt, is that a bad thing? I don't think it is a bad thing if you witness it. Otherwise, we'd have to live in a kind of cave and not feel things. Having said that, it's very individual, and different people have different sensitivities. So I know one person who is psychically very sensitive in a way that I don't understand. Visually, psychically very sensitive. They have to put up a lot of boundaries and barriers. They have a lot of compassion. So I can only speak for my own. And I think to you, I would say, what does it mean to be caught up in emotions? Is it that you shouldn't be feeling them? That you should be feeling others, so it's a judgment? Or is it just being lost in the thinking? I think that's the exploration. And if the exploration isn't, I'm not going to try to fix this. I'm going to give myself some private time and just go here, see what happens. Don't say it will work or not. Just do it as an experiment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Ajahn, when I was doing the temporary ordination, these are the things that I came across, and I just felt it in my heart, and then I was just using, oh, it will rise and pass away, and then rise and pass away, and things like that. And I could just calm myself and think rationally, and then, yeah, so. So I'm using it all the time when I in the community. Yeah, that does help me a lot. Thank you, Ajahn.
That's called right thinking, isn't it? As
Yes.
opposed to ego thinking and attachment thinking.
Yeah.
And that's very powerful. When you just put that word in, it will change. It's a hugely powerful statement because it's coming from wisdom. Okay?
Yeah. Then I could get myself calm, and then my practice went really well.
There
To
you
see
go.
the elements, 4 elements I just saw. And so
Right.
thank you, Ajahn. So nice to
Okay.
see you again.
Nice to see you.
My hair is growing.
Yeah, you got a bit of hair now, don't you?
Yes, Ajahn. Continue my 8 precepts still.
Excellent, excellent. Very good.
Thank you, Malika. Anyone else with a question for Luang Por? Luang Por, I was just reflecting on your talk today, and recently I read the book that was basically a capture Luang Por Sumedho's talk. It's the new book, Metta as Acceptance. And in there, exactly like what you said, attention, but Luang Por Sumedho said that essentially when you accept metta as acceptance, it's not just a reaction to having to think of expressing it, but it's just to be in the witness of it all, like consciousness of it all. And I thought whatever you said just now, though it was attention, but Luang Por has put it as metta, as acceptance.
Yeah, loving kindness is a pretty powerful word, and words are words, and they're not kind of one thing or the other. So to actually know the way things are, you have to be receptive to them. And that's how Luang Por teaches receptive awareness. And that's what metta is. But you can also stimulate perceptions of gratitude. You can also stimulate feelings of connection. You can also stimulate the physicality of being connected. And I think this is very, very important because much of our urban lives, because we're all urban folk and we use computer technologies, is always stimulating thought. And because it stimulates thought, there's a kind of deadening of the heart. And we feel the heart when there's, when someone really close to us or someone we love. But I think like when your consciousness learns how to abide here more, there's a wisdom there which responds from a really, really good place. The reactive part is usually through thought. What am I going to do? And so on. So just a practice of bringing your attention from your brain feels it, down through your throat, and getting to know that is for me, it's a very skillful thing. Because if I'm communicating with someone, and I'm able to feel this with them, I understand them better than if I'm just thinking. You understand people on many levels through body language and so on. So the development of metta is the first and foremost, like Luang Por says, is receptive awareness. That receptive part is what defines metta, because what we don't want to receive is the ugly, the difficult, the bad memories. We don't want to receive that in awareness, and then we're not witnessing. But also, I would say, there is this capacity. There's something about this area, to me, which is terribly important. And so, to like in witnessing thought, to not just dismiss it, but say, where is a place where I could abide? Where could attention abide? And that I find very, very helpful. It abides as a witness, that's always there. But as a physical abiding, I find that really, really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Luang Por, that like he taught me that as a samanera, second pansa as a monk, I was struggling with fear. And he said, no, you have to welcome fear. And that's what metta is. So welcoming the unwelcome, but not thinking about it, welcoming it as an aroma, a very important idea, very important idea of practice, way of being.
And sometimes, Luang Por, it's also about opening up to vulnerabilities.
Yes.
And accepting that vulnerabilities. Because I think in modern days, and particularly for us nowadays, we want to appear strong. But once we hit the heart chakra and we open up ourselves to the softness and the vulnerable us, sometimes we'll just stop because we don't want to admit it.
Yeah, that's very true. But also you live in environments which are not kind. They're competitive, people take advantage of you, so you have to put up much more boundaries than I do. Like if you're in an office and someone's going to steal your work from you, and so you have a more difficult social package than I do. And so the danger, of course, is that the protective mechanisms, you imagine like a soldier at war, they just have to close everything down until they have some freedom to look at that. Mm-hmm. So I think having a good morning meditation and really checking out what's going on is very important. So you stay open and not just close down. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have retreats in monasteries, for that very reason. Karen, I think we saw a hand there. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Karen. Are you able to unmute yourself? Press the unmute. Thank you.
There you go.
Hi, Luang Por. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you.
Luang Por, you mentioned waiting, and that's a biggie because it's a very natural human thing to try to fix everything that's broken. What would be the distinction or in your practice to wait out something and to be in or to be wallowing in inaction? So where do we actually strike the balance?
What is inherently unbroken?
Awareness.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
So if you really trust in background witnessing consciousness as your refuge, then there's no question. But if you still trust in thinking and the solving of problems through thought, sure, you use that in business, but in this case, in the spiritual life, there's nothing to fix. So the habit of fixing comes from the self-judgment, which, or other things, right? You've read or what your parents said you should be, et cetera, et cetera. So this whole program is based on fixing a personality, whereas witness is not a personality, right? So what is unbroken? So you might ask yourself that question as you're trying to fix something. Just ask yourself, what's not broken? and then you have the silent background. The
That's
key is
very-
always that, isn't it?
Yes.
But the nature of habit is deluding. And we can get caught up in days in these kind of cycles of trying to fix and self-judgment until we're, well, wait. Oh, this is the way it is. And that's our contemplative challenge, is to stay with it. Because it's not wrong to get lost in these kind of illusions. It's very human. And it's frustrating. It's just so frustrating. We just keep doing it.
So in daily life, while we abide in awareness in itself, I mean, certain things perhaps that can be fixed will, along the way, we fix it. If not, just leave it alone. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like you can, like if I am complaining about something, I just say, don't go there.
Mm.
That's just don't do it. Or, some language which I know, no, don't go there. Don't, let's fix it. But if I'm in a kind of complex self-analysis, oh gosh, I have this deep, and I should be doing this, then I'm just in thinking. I'm lost in thought.
Mm.
So it's like a quick fix rather than you've been lost for 2 days and trying to fix something. I think no thought is very important. To trust in no thought. That's where the waiting comes. Yeah.
When you say no thought, are you saying awareness of thoughts coming and going, or just really no thought? Because that would
Yeah,
be
the space between thoughts.
okay.
Yeah, when the mind is not thinking.
Yeah.
Like that listening is good for that. Just listen.
Mm.
No thought.
Mm.
Get to know that space. It's there all the time, obviously. It's just you don't have to find it. You just stop, listen. Listening is very good. And then no thought. No self. No Viradhammo. No caring.
Yeah, meditation is it's an isolated incident where you actually can kind of laboratory environment, that's fine. But in the waking moments of everyday life, that's the situations where we actually get caught in a lot of things. And then I actually find
Welcome.
that's
Welcome to the human condition.
yay.
It's just it's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
Like with when we were at Chithurst, when we were building Chithurst, we'd ask Ajahn Chah came to visit. He'd say, "Oh, there's so much work here. We loved it." In some sense, we said we don't have enough time to practice. We had this idea of practice. He said, "Do you have enough time to breathe? Then you're okay. Don't worry about it." So don't define practice as stillness or samadhi or tranquility. That's a trap. So if you define good practice as refinement, what do you do with coarseness? If you define it as deep stillness? What do you do with agitation? You think it's wrong, but agitation is an object, as is deep stillness. Right? So you begin to. That's where your practice is very portable. It moves in all, because awareness is in all spaces, but you're no longer caught in that sort of meditator's bias towards refinement.
Mm.
I mean, it's beautiful, but it's still conditioned, still dependent on structures.
Thank you, Luang Por. That was really helpful.
Okay, Karen. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think we've taken a lot of Luang Por's time and has indulged us in the last 90 minutes. It's perhaps time for us to let him rest for the evening and close today's beautiful session.
Thank you for listening.
Okay. And yes, maybe Luang Por, if you could just allow us, we'll just chant the Araham and pay respects to you as we take leave.
Okay.
So, brothers and sisters, let us take leave by paying homage to the Triple Gem. Araham Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivade. Swagato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namassami Supadipannam Bhagavato Sangha Sangam Namami. Since we pass.
Okay, be well, everyone.
Enjoy Luang Por Liam's visit, Luang Por.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Yes.
We had a great visit with Ajahn Suchito, so
Oh, wonderful.
ready for the next one. Okay,
Sadhu.
see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.